My name's Distance. I'm an addict.
Hi, Distance.
Thanks very much for having me here, for asking me to speak. Contrary to my natural appearance, I'm very happy to be here with you guys tonight. I know how I look. Yeah, CA is a different beast here. I'm very, very honored to be a part of it. I'm very happy to be a part of it. I did not come up in CA necessarily. However, in most recent years, I've started to kind of abandon my posts at other fellowships, and I've completely converted to CA service, so I'm very happy to be primarily devoted to CA these days. I'm here to tell my story. I was looking for hands at the beginning of the meeting also for who was here in their first 30 days, and no hands were up. So I presume everybody already kind of knows exactly what they need to do. So, right? Everybody's got recovery handled and licked. Excellent. Cool. So, yeah, you got this. That's fine. I don't usually get into telling my story too much. I can give a little bit of background to kind of qualify myself, if you will, and then I'll just tell you about what my experience is since I've been here. So, I'll start with a few obstacles that I had coming into recovery, and there were a number of them. I was born and raised in an Orthodox, fundamentalist, religious family. My father was a minister for 25 years, so that was my upbringing. So I was raised in that. I went from being very much both hands in the air, worship kind of kid, to an agnostic, which is just without knowledge, or maybe there is, maybe there isn't, where's my drugs? I went from being agnostic to being an atheist, which was I know so much about religion that I will disprove to religious people that their God exists. And I went from being an atheist to being a militant atheist, which was if you talk to me about that God or show me one of those books, I will light it on fire and throw it at your face. And I went from being a militant atheist to coming into recovery when they said you have to look at this God thing after they told me about what step one was. So I was not very interested. I also have an oldest biological brother who had been in and out of recovery for about 15 years by the time I came in, who had gone to probably every treatment center in Western Canada. So I was familiar with what the 12 steps were. I went to my first AA meeting at 14 years old. It was a little old meeting down in Kensington in a basement when there was smoking still allowed. You know, that was my first impression of the 12-step fellowships, was walking into this basement with, you know, fluorescent lights kind of flickering like an old horror movie, and that horizon line of cigarette smoke and going down, and half the table is bikers, the other half is businessmen, and people are throwing ashtrays and swearing at each other, complaining about how they can't drink anymore. So that was my first impression. So I thought, oh, that's what it is. That's all right. That's not so bad. My second impression was I went to a very different kind of meeting, and everybody was talking about God, and I thought, oh, this is what it really is. I definitely don't want anything to do with this. And when I first really came in with the idea that maybe there was a solution in these rooms for me, I had very little interest in actually getting sober. I just tried so many other ways to change my life that didn't seem to work, and I had seen people go into these rooms and come out of them slightly different. And that's all I really came in here with. When I first came into the 12-step fellowships, I mean, I was lucky enough to go into a treatment facility that taught out of this book. And even when I arrived there, I mean, I was still pretty sure that drinking wasn't going to be a problem. I could still do that. I could probably smoke crack like a gentleman on the weekends. You know, like I'm sure I could just curb that if I could just stop doing this one drug, this one very specific way, because that's really the problem for me. That was my attitude coming in. I didn't know what this had to offer. I didn't know what they were going to suggest of me, so I had to come in with that. When I came into recovery, very young, again, 95 pounds, living in my crack dealer's mudroom, you know, I was going to go do a day program thing, like an outpatient. Like, I've got a place to live, I'll be fine, don't worry about it, I'll come here and learn about this stuff, and then I'll go home and smoke crack on the weekends, everything's going to be cool. And they told me very, very quickly that they weren't going to allow me to live anywhere else and that I had to move in, so I did. I stayed for 4 months there, and I continued on after leaving that place. I was not accustomed to to living any semblance of like a regular life at all. So at 14 years old was my first time experiencing homelessness. Again, living in that kind of religious upbringing, long story boring. I returned one day On a Saturday, my family's house was full of church friends, and my father had approached me when I walked in, and I was a bit of a weirdo when I was 14. I was wearing fishnet stockings on my arms, like to my cut-off shirt with like safety pins in it, and makeup and stuff, and I was a bit of a... Anywho, just trying to find myself. It's not a phase, Dad. So I had gone to like Claire's or Ardeen or something like that in the mall. I can't remember which one. And I got my ears pierced that day with like one of those little guns that they use. And so anywho, I came home to a house full of church folk, and my father proceeded to kind of introduce me to everybody. He said, "Oh, look, my daughter is home," is the first thing he said when I walked in the room. And then we got into a bit of an argument. I think I actually tried to jump up and punch him in the face at one point, but I was very little and very round, so it wasn't very successful. My father proceeded to call me a faggot and told me to get the hell out of his house and not to come back until those things were out of my ears. That was my first experience being homeless. So I packed a backpack and I did not return for a very, very long time. So that was my introduction into this different way of living. And I always relate those experiences prior to really being heavily involved in drinking and using, although I was at that time. But I mean, since I was this big, since as long as I can remember having memories, I've always had that feeling, and it talks about that in our literature, that I didn't quite belong. So even before I drank, before I used, I always had this feeling like I was just trying to feel connected to something, to some group of peoples. I was always trying to find my way in and out of different, groups of friends or different social activities, and I never felt like I really found my place. And so I was always searching for that connection to something. And I didn't realize that until much, much later. But looking back, I can say that that's what it was. I just felt disconnected from everything and from everyone. I just felt like I was different, and nobody really understood the way that my mind worked. Nobody understood the feelings of loneliness and those things. And this might be a bit of an outside issue, but not really. I mean, I've been suicidal since I was 6 years old. So I was on medications from 8 years old until I was 18 for that. And I remember very young being in a psych ward and being kind of just placed in there. I saw a child psychologist after about 5 or 6 days, and my mother came in. And he's like, your son isn't manically depressed. Your son gets sad because sad things happen to him. Like mind-blowing. I'm not sad for no reason. Some sad things have happened, and I'm sad about it. But again, I've always felt like I never it's not that I wanted to die, I just didn't know how to be here. And that's what I've always said. I just didn't know how to be here. I didn't know if I wanted to be here, and I didn't know what to be or how to be. And so I've been to a number of speaker meetings in my time, and especially earlier on when I was going to some maybe not so solution-based meetings, and just hearing old-timers talking about how terrible drinking was and under the bridge and all the negative things it did to their life, but very rarely did I hear about how awesome it was. I didn't pick up a needle at 10 years old, shove it in my arm, and be like, oh man, that's the worst, I'm going to do that for the next 20 years. Drugs and alcohol were amazing. Amazing. It finally gave me that feeling like I belong somewhere. I'm connected to something. And it did that for me for quite a long time until it didn't. And I remember in the beginning, all those fears that I had, all that fear of not being enough, not being able to fit in anywhere, drinking and using was the solution to that fear. It gave me something. It made me feel bigger than, better than. What I always wanted to be was better than. As another member in here always uses the term, I'm an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. She's like, don't you know who I am? I'm nothing. Right? That epitomizes my life. Puff up my chest, and on the inside I'm this tiny little scared kid, just screaming, terrified. But in the beginning, it solved so many problems for me. So many problems. Towards the end, however, it was starting to create more problems than it was solving for me. And that's really what led me here. I did not come here to get sober. I did not come here to find God. I did not come here to make friends. I came into these rooms because my life was a reoccurring nightmare every day. And I didn't know how to get out of that loop, out of that cycle. We talk about that in this book, The Alcoholic Cycle, and I love being able to draw it out physically. It's really quite interesting. Because nobody had ever explained these things to me. Nobody could ever tell me, this is your deal, this is why you are this way, until I came here. Everybody was just kind of very mystified by me. And it says that in here too. It's like, why can't you stop? You know? You've got such a good family, you've got such a good life waiting for you, why can't you just stop? Those questions that I could never answer either. Right? So it talks about, being restless, irritable, discontented. That's me dead sober. It still can be today if I'm left unchecked. Restless, irritable, discontented. I'm restless, I'm uncomfortable in my own skin, which I have been my entire life until I got here. I'm comfortable in my own skin, I want to crawl out, people are pissing me off, I'm frustrated at life, all these negative things that keep happening around me. I'm discontented, I don't have what I want. Why don't I have more? Why can't I ever get what I need? Why do these things keep happening? It doesn't matter where I go or what neighborhood or city I live in, I just attract bad energy or something, man. I don't know what it is. Like that idea. It's like, I don't know, just bad things just seem to find me. Wherever I go, I don't know. That old saying, just wherever I go, there I am. Right? I'm always there. Common denominator is this guy in all those situations. So I'm restless, I'm irritable, I'm discontented when I'm sober. Which is why I drink and use in the first place, because I'm not fond of feeling sober. Sober is a very uncomfortable feeling if left unchecked. So, restless, irritable, discontented. Until I can at least experience that sense of ease and comfort which comes at once from taking that first one. So the only solution I've ever had to that uncomfortable in my own skin, pissed off, frustrated, unhappy, is drinking. So I start thinking about, right, what can I do to stop this feeling? It's like, right, that thing worked. And I remember what it did for me, not what it does to me. Right? That's one super harmful thing, and I will say this till the end of the earth, one very harmful thing that I heard lots when I first came in, less so now, but, early recovery, if you're thinking about drinking or using, just play the tape forward. Just play the tape all the way through. Remember how bad it was that last time. Man, that's my problem. That's why I'm here. I lack the ability to play the tape forward. That's why I'm a drug addict. If I could do that, I wouldn't need to be here. When I play the tape in my head in early recovery or when I'm still using, just think about how bad it got. My mind will say, remember that sense of ease and comfort that you got at once from taking that first one? But remember that time where you crapped your pants waiting for your dealer, then you had to get drugged home because you passed out in that alley? Don't remember that part, though. Just remember the first part. And that's what my mind does. It remembers what it does for me, not to me. So I remember that, and I think about that so much. My first thought is, man, I could really use one. The second thought is, man, I haven't had one in a while. The third thought is, oh, I wonder if that guy still lives down the street. And my fourth thought is, oh, I probably have that phone number in my phone still. Maybe if I call that guy, maybe if he forgets that I owe him money, maybe I can, go to his house. And then I follow that rabbit hole all the way down until I succumb to that desire again and I take the first one, which is where the allergy and the phenomenon of craving begins. Another misconception, especially in treatment, 6 months sober, I had a really bad cravings today. It's like, no, you didn't. So, the craving starts when it hits my body, right? That first needle, that first hoot, that first drink, that first whatever. That sets it off. Now I'm craving more. Again, to borrow a line, I'm addicted to more and yours, right? Those are my two things that I'm addicted to. And for me, being a very low-bottom intravenous drug user, I would take anything. Anything. Just more. I want to feel that feeling. I've been chasing that feeling that I first had at 10 years old my entire life and never being able to get it again. So I want more. So I don't know when, how, or if I'm going to stop. I don't know what I'm going to end up putting in my body. I have no idea. That leads me into the spree, right? Which is a week, it could be a month, it could be a year, a day, whatever. It depends how much money I have and how many people's couches I haven't abused yet. So I enter that spree. And then I run out of drugs, I run out of drinks to freaking mellow out, I run out of whatever kind of prescription I've been trying to crush up and put into my arm, God only knows, nighttime Tylenol or some nonsense, people are sick and tired of me showing up at their house at 4 a.m. and breaking in through their windows, nobody wants to let me sleep on their couch or their floor anymore, and I emerge remorseful. Oh my God, how did that happen again? Last I checked, it was 2 Fridays ago, and I said I was just going to buy half a bag this time, Now my rent at home is not paid, I've locked myself out, all these things. Nobody likes me anymore. I've got no clean pairs of pants. What am I supposed to do? And I get to that moment that we all lovingly refer to in the book as well as the firm resolution, which is the drug addict's national anthem. I'm never doing that again. Can I hear it? I'm never doing that again. All right, firm resolution. Put some theme music behind that, would you? That's... Thank you. I prefer the final countdown, but that works too. So, and again, this is not... The bulk of what I say is not original. I've been sitting around these rooms, I absorb stuff from other people like a goddamn sponge, and then I pretend like it's mine when I speak. It's not, right? It's not mine. But if you were to set me up to a polygraph test, in those moments, those firm resolution moments, when I said to myself, when I said to whatever thing up there around us is listening, when I said to whoever else was in the room, I'm never doing that again, I would have passed that polygraph test, that lie detector test, because I meant it, 100%. Every single time I said those words, I meant it. I am never doing that again. That is the honest to God truth. I'm never doing this again. And then I say, okay, I got to stop. I got to just no drinks, no drugs, just for a little while. Like, I can't do this again. And then I get sober. Then I start feeling restless. Then I start getting irritable. Then I start getting discontented. And then I think, what could have helped me stop feeling like this? And, that first one, maybe that guy. And then I was like, oh, there it is. The first one's in front of me. I take that first one. I'm on a spree. I emerge remorseful. How did this happen again? I'm never doing that again. I get sober. Oh, sober. And then I get restless. And then I get irritated. Like, the cycle goes and goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. And this is my entire life leading up to coming here. Until I can experience an entire psychic change, there is little hope of my recovery. That sounds weird. I didn't like the language in this book at all, man. Just coming in here being like, I'm just a low-bottom IV drug user. Why do I need a psychic change? Is this like some kind of like... I had a lot of preconceptions about this place, too, before I came here. I knew something about Catholicism. I had studied a bit of it, and I knew quite a bit about like Scientology and stuff. And I thought maybe those two would come together and made a love child, and and then just kind of like spawned out Alcoholics Anonymous. And then I was gonna get my recovery cape, my wheelbarrow full of big books to throw at homeless people, and after a year sober, I have to donate 25% of the salary from the job I'm gonna get working for Alcoholics Anonymous. I had a lot of ideas. So, but when I came in, when people started to tell me those things, like explaining that cycle to me, like speaking the way that I'm speaking, when I heard other people talk that way, we call it kind of like the language of the heart. People in these rooms were speaking the way that I'd always thought. They were speaking about experiences that I had actually experienced, and I didn't know that anybody had ever done those things or thought those things. When I came in here, I was very convinced, none of you will understand. I'm the only person who has ever suffered the way that I have suffered. I'm the only person who has ever thought those crazy thoughts that I've thought. I'm the only person that has ever done the things that I've done to get what I need. You guys don't get it. You don't understand that when I put something in, it just goes. Nobody gets that. And then I sit down, I shut up, and I listen, and I'm hearing my story through the voices of other people. People that don't look a lot like me. When I came in, I was the youngest person in my treatment facility by 25 years. So the next person, big age gap there for me. And I didn't really see very many young people around recovery in the rooms. There was one or two kind of salt and pepper scattered here and there. But I mean, this wasn't, and again, so I'm listening to these old guys and these old women like say the same things that I've gone through, as a kid. Incredible. And I started to get really excited. I'm getting really stoked. And it says in here, we watch the hope in the eyes of the newcomer rise as we start to discuss the alcoholic problem or the addiction problem. Right? It says, but his eyes fall when we speak of spiritual matters. And another part in the book says, for some of us, even casual reference to spiritual matters made us bristle with antagonism. Which means I hear people in early recovery, I come in, I hear people in a room talking about God, my skin gets a bit hot and itchy, and my ears shut off. Because I don't want to hear it. So they're talking about this, and I'm getting so excited. Like, oh my God, these people actually know what the hell's the matter with me. Like, this is great. You have a solution for that. Like, give me the solution. Like, what's the solution? I can't wait for the solution. And it's like, oh, the solution? It's God. No! Like, I've been duped. Not again. I know what that's all about, man, and I don't want it. And I've said this before too. Really funny. It actually happened to me in a CA meeting not that long ago when I was just asked to share. I was talking about this, something to do with step 2, and I was talking about how I was angry when I was in early recovery at the God thing, and I explained in my share where I come from, being religious, atheist, agnostic, blah, blah, blah. And this woman behind me, while I'm sharing, it just starts laughing and cackling and laughing. I was like, I don't know what the hell her deal is. And she gets asked to share right after me, and she's still laughing, and she's like, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how you can be angry at a God that you don't believe exists. It's like, touche, lady. All right, so when I come in, God, for me, keep in mind I was born religious. I was raised religious. So when I hear God, I know exactly what God is. Precisely. I was told, God is this, it's nothing else. God is this. And then me and my imaginative little mind puts this mental image of what God is in my mind. And God, in case for those of you guys who don't know who and what God is, God is a Caucasian man, somehow, don't ask me how, Caucasian, sitting in a pearly throne, floating on a cloud, yielding a large lightning bolt, waiting, just patiently, for me to eat pork or swear at my mother. Right? That's God in my little mind when I come in here. And what the hell does that thing have to do with me, like, not living a nightmare anymore? I don't get it. So, when I came in, again, and I use this phrase often, this is probably the only time you'll hear me swear, it took an entire team of men to pull my own head out of my own ass when I came into this program, when it came to this concept. And in step 2, it says that they don't demand that I believe anything. That's it. 8 words was all I had to understand about step 2 in order for me to move on and have a chance at what they're talking about in this book. There is a God, and I'm not it. That's all I had to understand about step 2. 8 words. There's a God, and I'm not it. So long as I can believe that maybe, just maybe, I'm not God, then I might have a chance of doing the rest of this stuff. Which is pretty simple for me. That wasn't what pushed me over that hurdle, however. Those are nice words, but what really pushed me over the hurdle in step 2, for those of you who are familiar, which I assume is most of you, there are promises all throughout this book, right? The really popularized ones, are the step 9 promises that are read in tons and tons of 12-step fellowship meetings. I lovingly refer to these as the step 0 promises. So the other promises say, if I do the work to the best of my ability with an open mind and honesty and willingness, I will receive this. My life will look like this spiritually. All right? This is what my life will look like if I do the work. So the step 0 promises is precisely what I am guaranteed it is a promise if I do none of the work. Right? Well, people also refer to them as the bedevilments. However, step 0 promises, we were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were a prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy, and we couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. So do I want to get a solution to that, or do I want to argue about how I'm God? That's pretty much what it says right after. It's relating this to an old story in here. But I mean, like, if I want a solution to that, here's the rest of the steps, and if I do the rest of the steps, I get those promises. But even to this day, if I let up on my spiritual program of action and rest on my laurels or my achievements, I've done so much so far in the last few years, I'm going to take a recovery break for the next month and go to Mexico. My life will look like this. No, not a cruise ship. Devin's not even listening. How was your recovery break? Excellent. My life will look like this. 100%. Again, it's the promises, right? It's promised that my life will look like that. So, laurels. Really fun. Especially somebody actually really segued this nicely. It just took me about 35 minutes to kind of pick it back up. But the word balked. Woo! So in step 3, when we go through kind of how it works and everything else, moving into step 3, we talk about that. It's very interesting. Again, I've been around for a few years, and I've taken people through this book many, 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 many times. A few. I've taken a few men through this book as well, and I never stopped to ask myself what the hell that word actually meant. I always thought I knew what it meant. I always thought I knew what a lot of things meant, and I still do. And it wasn't until last year there's this big roundup that's held in Banff, a 12-step roundup. And a speaker came up from the States and sat down with a group of probably 100 of us, is my guess, and walked through the step 1, 2, and 3 process together. So we went through the book, we did the deal, said the words, did the things, and he stopped at that point. And, at some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. And he asked the room full of 100 people from 10 days sober to probably 45, 50 years sober in there, who here knows what this word really means in this context? And a lot of people thought they had the answer. Nobody had the answer. None of them knew what the actual meaning of the word was. And neither did I. I didn't put my hand up. I wouldn't dare. But, and he explained it. And again, how many thousands of times have I heard this? How many times have I heard this read in a meeting? And I never stopped to ask myself, what does it mean? So, balked also used to be used in baseball. So it was a foul for a pitcher if he pretended to start pitching and then stopped suddenly. That was a balk. So when it talks about that, as some of these we balked, we thought we could find an easier, softer way. It's not scoffing. That's what I thought it meant. We scoffed. We said, whatever. But it means that I start something and then I stop suddenly. So for me, that was step 1. I'm doing it. Step 2, maybe. Step 3, nope. And I stopped. I didn't want to do anything else. That's what it's talking about. I thought I could find an easier, softer way. Well, I'll do step 1. I'm not God, cool. But then, maybe let's just go say sorry to people and help others. I think that program looks really nice to me right now. I'll just do, 1, 2, 9, 12. That sounds nice. Not an easier, softer way. And 3, man, some of the wording in this book is so goddamn daunting. Whew. Turn your will and your life. Step 2 proposition, God is either everything or God is nothing. What is my choice to be? Just holy hell, cool it, man. I just got step 1. And again, very simply, my will, my life, my thoughts and my actions to being not a prick. When I'm living in that cycle, when I'm living in that over and over and over, I'm not the greatest human being, as much as I try to be or make other people think that I am. I'm using all the time, I'm lying all the time, I'm cheating all the time, stealing all the time. I would like to not be that. So I'm going to turn my thoughts and my actions over to, if I'm not God, maybe something wants to help me. And just to retrack for a second before I got in there, the hurdle that I got over into was just that, to get me into 3 also. I had believed for so many years, especially with my drug of choice, I would be driving around if I hadn't used it in 10 hours and I would feel it, I would taste it in my skin. And as soon as I would taste it, I'd be getting it. I would just be getting it. Without any thought at all. Stubbed my toe, use. Got a girlfriend, use. Lost the girlfriend, use. Got a new apartment, use. Lost my apartment, use. Homeless, use. Got a check, use. Need a check, find somebody, steal, use. Anything. And as much as I always said, I'm not doing this again, I'm not going to do that again, this time it's enough, this time I'm only going to do this much, I believed, and I had very much faith, that power that drugs had over me was guiding my life, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I tried, and nothing could ever stop it. So I believed in that power that was greater than me, and I understood when I got here that if I kept going the way that I was going, that power was inevitably going to destroy me. So then, if I believed in that, and I've lived by those bases for so many years, why then is it so difficult to think maybe, just maybe, there's something bigger than me out there that doesn't want to see me die, that wants to see me be a good human being, that doesn't want me putting a needle in my arm every day? I can't say that I have no belief. I've believed in this for how many years? So don't tell me I didn't have any belief. And people had to point those things out to me, pull those things out of me. It's yeah, man, I lived on that for a long time, so maybe, okay, sure, maybe there's something that wants to see me do well. And I said, if you can't call it God, use an acronym. Go back to kindergarten, for God's sake. Just a good, orderly direction. Okay, cool. That lasted for a while, and that was fine, until it didn't anymore, until I needed more. So in step 3, as we understood him, is underlined. It's underlined again in step 11. So whatever God is, or whatever God was to me in step 3, I start inviting that into the work that I do. I start inviting that into my day-to-day process. So when I go from step 3, which tells me immediately go do step 4, I say, okay, whatever this God thing is, like, help me out here. You know, I've heard from some people this might be difficult. I could really use some help. I want to be honest. I want to change my life. And I start inviting God in. How many of you guys watched True Blood when that was out, that vampire movie, TV show? A few of you? Okay, so one of like the newer kind of like myths about vampires in that show is that vampires can't actually enter your house unless they're invited in. So I want you to just imagine God as this handsome vampire on your front porch. You know, he's not coming in unless you ask. You know, and for me, that's what I had to do. I was just like, right, I have to invite this thing in. I don't know if I believe in it. I don't know what it is. He, she, it, they, doesn't matter. But I'm going to invite that thing in. And so help me to do this work. Help me with this. Help me with that. Like, I'm willing to do it. I don't want to think this way anymore. Take away these thoughts from me. Help me to act better. Help me to do better. All these things. And so as I understand God in step 3 is very, very basic. It should be, at least. The experiences that I've had where maybe I've seen something larger at play in my life. That's all it means in step 3. Experiences that I've had in my life where I've thought, man, like, you know, happy coincidence or God shots or sometime where I should have been dead and something happened kind of like semi-miraculously and something didn't happen. That's how I understand God in step 3. That's it. The experiences that I've had with God. And by the time I get to step 11, I will have had a very long series of experiences with God if I've invited God into everything that I've done in the process. So my understanding of God in step 11 is pretty different. You know. Inventory, what makes me tick, talk about it, get a bit uncomfortable, say some prayers, take the list from 4, make amends, etc., etc. 10, 11, and 12, man, my God, living in 10, 11, and 12. Like, where do I even begin with that? Again, that's just a continuation of what I've learned so far. Something for me, that step 10, that continuing to take personal inventory, I want to quash another thing while I'm up here too, because I've still heard it said, and it's so harmful in my experience. So terribly harmful. Sponsors and people from other places telling people in early recovery that if you are on step 1, you can do any step with a 1 in front of it. Right out of the gate. If you're on step 1, you can do step 1, 10, 11, and 12 as soon as you come in. And I can say from my own experience that is extremely harmful. Extremely harmful. I don't know what those words mean. If you want to see a drug addict whip himself to death, metaphorically, every night and every morning, go back in time and visit me trying to do step 1, 10, 11, and 12 when I had a week sober. You know, when I retire at night in my treatment center, you know, was I resentful? So goddamn resentful. Was I selfish? I'm so selfish. Was I dishonest? I'm just such a liar. You know, I'm afraid of everything. Just whip, 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 whip. I didn't know what any of that meant. Again, language is very important. Continued to take personal inventory suggests to me, in the English language, that I have done inventory already, which means that I have done step 4 through 9. When I'm wrong, promptly admit it, suggests that I've done all the way up to step 9, because that's where I do those things anyways. Step 11 says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God, which insinuates that I have done those first 10 steps to get to that place where I have that conscious contact with God, and I'm improving upon it. And 12 is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, which says, you have done the first 11 steps, congratulations, you should have had a spiritual awakening, now you are ready for these things. And I'm trying to go out there and doing these things at step 1. You know, just go home and read page 86 and 87. But I haven't read the doctor's opinion yet. It's fine. You know, just go home and just like, no. It was very harmful. Something that I've encountered a lot recently. 10 is effectively just a very quick spot check throughout my day inventory of the same things that I find out in the 4th column of step 4. It's like, where have I been selfish, resentful, dishonest, and afraid? Ultimately. When it comes down to it, those are the 4 things. I also have a great deal of, I would say, sympathy and sorrow for those people who go to do step 5s and come back with a list being like, well, the guy I did my step 5 with gave me a list of 295 character defects that I have to work on. And I was like, man, it's 4 things. It's those 4 things. Burn your paper, you know? as a result of continuing to do inventory on an ongoing basis, I start to see how those 4 things manifest in my life, how they may show up in my life in different ways. Sure, they might manifest in 295 different ways, but it always comes down to me being resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid. Always. Always those 4 things. And then I can start seeing. And I use this example too. So if I'm in a group, and it goes both ways. If I'm in a group of 10 people who I don't really know all too well, I will instinctually pick out the weakest looking one, and I will probably make some wisecrack about how that person looks, so that the other 9 people will laugh, so I have now gained the approval of that group of people at the expense of one other person. Is humor my character defect? No. Making a joke about somebody is not my character defect. My character defect is I'm terrified that those other people won't accept me. And so I've learned over time that this is the way that I can get people to accept me, tear that one guy down, build myself up a bit. The defect is fear. So again, as a result of doing inventory, I can see how these things show up in my life. But I'm not completely humorless because that's a defect. I don't ask God to remove my humor. In 6 and 7, it's also worth noting that nowhere does it say, write down on a piece of paper which defects you believe are standing in the way of God and your usefulness to Him and your fellows. Because that's me playing God again. I just need to be willing. And I use that step 7 prayer all the time in these situations. Please remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. I don't know what that is. There's an appropriate amount of certain things. There's an appropriate amount of fear to have. If I was fearless, I'd be dead very quick. If I was entirely honest, I'd be getting slapped in the face a lot more probably. And again, there are certain amounts of those things that are necessary. And I don't know what's standing in the way. I trust that God knows, and I'm trusting that if I'm willing to have that removed, it will be. Moving into 12, having had the spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, it used to say in the original manuscript, it actually used to say, carry this message to other people, especially alcoholics, not just to alcoholics. So when it says practicing these principles in all my affairs, that means everything I do. Something that living in 10, 11, and 12 has given me, which is probably one of the greatest gifts that I could say that I've ever received from Creator and from this fellowship and from these steps, is consistency of character. I'm the same person in this room as I will be after the meeting smoking outside. I'm the same person there as I am when I get home to my wife and my child. I'm the same person there as when I go to work. I remember I once was saying this and I was getting really riled up in a meeting, and those times when you speak and you kind of just words are just getting ahead, and I wasn't really thinking about it, but I was really fired up, in this big meeting of people, and I was like, I'm the same person in the boardroom as I am in the bedroom. Right? And I think somebody said, so there's some kinky board meetings or something like that. Or some very boring bedroom moments. Depends on your perspective. So, but the idea is I used to have to be somebody different everywhere I went. Always. Always. Throw a leather vest on me, put me in the motorcycle club, I'm one of those guys. Put me in the managerial position of some weird retail shop and I'll be that guy for you. Anything. I'll be anything that I want other people want me to be. And that's another really big piece of information that I gathered from the result of doing these steps and continuing inventory. Up until I came here, and really up until the last few years, I have always gained my own self-worth based on what I thought you guys wanted me to be and what you thought of me. So your guys' opinion is what gave me worth. So I would try on this mask today, this mask today, this mask today. Maybe they'll like this guy today. Because if you guys don't think highly of me, I can't think highly of me. Another really quick example that I like to use. I lived in a small town in northern Alberta, and I spoke in a British accent for a month and a half. Without breaking character. So to the point that when I left that town, my conscience, my inner thoughts, my little, devil and angel voices on my shoulders, they were British. My dreams were British. The absolute insanity. And imagine now, if you will, going back up to that small town after having worked some steps and having to make amends to these people. This is my life now. Hello. My name is Distance. It is not Tom from Middlesex, England, and I am here to make amends with you, kind sir. But again, I thought maybe this town will like this guy this time, because the last guy didn't work so well. And I don't need that today. It is none of my goddamn business what you think of me. Because I've been given a design for living that I know is the right way to live, and if I live in companionship with my Creator and with my fellows, and I try to not step on the toes of all of you guys, I should be doing pretty okay. This program gives me a way to live where I don't have to worry about if Lucas bumps into Peyton and Peyton bumps into Justin. What if he finds out that I told him this one thing when I told him I was supposed to be over there, and then he talks to you, and then you talk to Justin, and then Justin's like, actually, he was supposed to be at my place, he owes me $50, and then what if you talk to this person? Like, that's what my whole life was before I got here. It's like, they're going to figure out who I really am, before I do. I had no idea who the hell I was when I came in here. And my fear in coming in was not that, I was going to find out all these things about myself. It was, if all of this stuff gets removed, like they say, I'm going to have this new life. I'm going to have new purpose. I'm going to have new friends. All these things, that old life will wash away. My fear was, what the hell is going to be left? If I can't steal, how am I supposed to eat? If I can't lie or cheat or manipulate you, how am I supposed to find a place to live? If I can't tell tall tales about myself, who's going to like me? That's what I was afraid of. Just like, I have no idea what that person looks like. And that's what I've been running away from my entire life, is seeing who that person is. Because I've always thought that that person wasn't enough. And this program, this way of living, you people, have given me the ability to sit comfortably in my own skin. To see the person beneath all of that nonsense and be okay with who's sitting here. And that's pretty rad. In the 12th step, too, I've encountered a lot more of this recently as just the result of asking questions. But I know a lot of long-timers that don't sponsor, that have not sponsored. A lot of people that get through the 12 steps and use it for themselves. When Bill W. was actually interviewed and asked about those kind of people a long time ago, he was asked, what's your opinion? Because this has been going on for a long time. What's your opinion of men who use the 12 steps and then don't sponsor others? And his response was, I have no time for those fellows. They are ungrateful. I know so many people that get this life as a result of doing this work and keep it to themselves, when as a result of doing this and reading this, understanding this, the only way I get to continue living this way is by giving it away. That's it. If I keep it to myself, it will not work. I will not receive the promises that this book gives me. I will not receive the life worth living that it says I can have if I keep it to myself. I keep what I have only by giving it away, and only with vigilance. I picked up, and again, not to toot my own horn by any sense, I had a sponsee who became my sponsee 3-4 years ago, who was coming up on his 25th year sober birthday, and he was ready to hang himself. He's from Red Deer, and he was driving up to this old treatment center that I used to work at. He was driving up every week to sit in on the morning meetings, and the afternoon meetings, and the evening meetings, multiple times a week. What are you doing? Like, is there no meetings in Red Deer? And he sat me down and he told me all about this, like how he's felt restless, irritable, and discontented. How he hasn't really been going to meetings, hasn't really been involved. And I asked him, when was the last time you sponsored somebody? And he said, sponsored? I did the 12 steps when I was here 25 years ago. Cool. When was the last time you did a set of steps? 25 years ago when I was here. It's like, and you wonder why you want to kill yourself. And he'll be the first person to tell you that it's been this last 4 years, and it's not anything to do with me. I just let him know what I've been told to do. He went out, started getting service positions. He went out, started going through another set of steps. He goes out now, he finds sponsees. He speaks at the hospitals and institutions in Red Deer, and he's become a fixture of the Red Deer Fellowship down there. And he'll be the first person to tell you that he will not say that he has recovered for the last 29 years. He's been recovered for 4. Because this means nothing if I'm not giving it away. It means nothing if I'm not living it. If I'm living it, I'm doing the work in step 12. I'm carrying this message to other people, and that does not just mean showing up and talking at meetings. I also work in the treatment industry. It does not exempt me from doing 12-step work. It does not exempt me from sponsoring people. I get paid to be there, which is amazing. Don't get me wrong. I'm very grateful to work in that industry. I'm grateful that I get paid to talk about this and to talk about recovery all day, but it does not mean that that is my 12-step work. I've seen too many people die or go back out who have considered working in a treatment center their 12-step work. Nobody got paid to take me through the steps. My sponsor did not get health benefits to take me through the steps, right? That's the reality. So I have to do these things. But the nice thing is the more I do these things, the more I sponsor, the more I come out, the less it feels like work. This does not feel like work to me, having to do any of this anymore. It becomes an operating part of who I am and how I live. And what could be better than that? I will end with this very quickly. This is what I was taught by my elders. Just so you know, I don't have any hatred towards religion anymore either. I've been very fortunate to find my place in a spiritual community that is my family, which is great. And I've practiced that for many, many years. And this is what my elders had to say about what kind of we go through, and I've adapted it a little bit into what we do in the 12 steps. So what I'm taught is, out there in active addiction and alcoholism, my entire life, I've been in this pitch black tunnel, just lost and struggling for so long, surrounded by all these people that look a lot like you guys. All these other people down there in that darkness, and I'm pushing my way through all these people, just stumbling along. And finally, after years and years of being lost in there, I start to see this tiny little glimpse of light at the end of this very dark tunnel. And so I start pushing my way through all these other people trying to get there. And I arrive at the base of these steps, set of steps, these 12 steps. And the light's at the very top. And I start taking these steps one at a time. Each step that I take, the light gets a little bit brighter and a little bit brighter. Every step I take, I start looking behind me at everybody else that's still back there in that darkness, and I think to myself, I never have to go there again. Maybe that light at the end of the tunnel is the sun. Maybe there will be nice nature. I can be out there. I can be free. Finally, I'll be out of all of this. So I keep taking those steps with that excitement. I never have to go back there again. The light gets brighter and brighter and brighter. I get all the way up to that 12th step. And it turns out that that entire time, at the top of those steps, it's been my Creator holding a candle. He puts it in my hand, and he says, now you have to go back in. That's what the 12th step is. That's what I'm doing here. And that work is never finished. Thank you very much for having me tonight.